so much for on Truth for Our Time, where we help you live His Word in today's world. Because if He expects you to live through it, He instructed you how to do it somewhere in His Word. So we help you when the headlines hit home. Thanks for those of you who like to listen in live, watch online, Webcast One Live Studio, Webcast One. The number 1 is spelled out, O-N-E, webcastonelive.com on Fridays, usually at 10 a.m., but not this week. I am in D.C. With a conference there, so we pre-taped, and so sorry for those of you who wanted to see the show live on Friday. Should be back for the next couple of weeks, and then, of course, when the RNC convention happens, I will be stepping away again, and so we'll have to pre-tape those weeks as well. If you want more information, you can always go to Truth for Our Time Facebook page. I do have a web page, but I am like the four-paw skid when the dog doesn't want to go in the kennel. I am not good about doing my web page. I try, but it's like taking medicine for me. So we do have a tamarascott.com webpage. And for those of you who like to listen at noon on Sundays, thank you for listening in. I appreciate the text. I appreciate the phone calls that I get when you hear the show. So thank you very much. Noon on Sundays, 99.3. All right, so we're going to jump right to it. It's been a busy week. Things are happening. Protesters at Trump rallies. Think this through before you criticize a Trump. Even if he said things in the most horrible fashion, that does not give him blame for someone else's actions. Be careful on that, because there are other groups that have tried to pin pastors for the language they use at the pulpit when a so-called hate crime is committed against another group. When someone takes action, there are certain people who are now have not equal rights, but supremacy, privileged rights, and you can't say certain things to them, and they're trying to pin that back on pastors. So be careful blaming Trump for the actions of these protesters. But what I'm finding in this, and this is off the cuff, so just allow me, if you will, it's just a question I'm going to ask you. Why am I seeing women the ones standing up? Why is it the women? You've seen the one where the woman had the Trump t-shirt on, and she may have kind of egged it on herself, no pun intended, after they threw eggs at her. But why were all the men there filming? No one came to her rescue. Call me, I'm not a feminist, I get it. But somebody should have come to her rescue, for crying out loud. Somebody should have stopped the filming and stopped the harassment. I'm just saying, men, where are you? In so many of these instances, it's the women standing. It's the women doing battle. And I get it. So many of you have been pushed into all you can handle financially. Your schedules are tight. And society has told you to sit down and be quiet as a man. But I'm telling you to stand back up. Because for a woman, and especially a strong woman, there's nothing more inspiring and attractive than a strong man. Not overbearing, not lording over, but just a respectful man who will stand. It's what women are looking for. I don't care if they argue it or not. It's what they're looking for. It takes a stronger man to deal with strong women. That's for sure. The ones who want to lord over their women, it's not strong. All right, already off course in the first 4 minutes of the show. On the phone line, we have Jenny Caligiuri. Jenny Caligiuri is with the Congressional Prayer Foundation. She's also with the Governor's Prayer Association, if I'm saying those things correctly. And she was also the catalyst behind reading the Word of God in the Iowa State House before the legislative session started in January. Turned out to be a wonderful event. So many people loved it. People who worked there, people who were legislators, people off the street who just came to read the Bible. It was a tremendous event. Something else had been sitting and stirring in her soul long before that, and she felt this is the year to make it happen. We've had her talk about this on the show before. Jenny Caligiuri, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tamara, for having me on this morning. Really appreciate it.
So tell our folks the 99-county Bible reading marathon. This is something you'd wanted to do for quite some time, and you felt this was the year.
That is correct. I felt like the Lord placed this in my spirit a couple of years ago to read the word from Genesis through Exodus in front of every courthouse in our state. And the surprisingly, in December, I felt like he told me to do it at our Capitol first. And just as you mentioned before, that's where we did it. And now we're working on finding county captains in every county in our state that will head up reading the Word and getting readers, usually for 15 minutes each, or you can read for 30 minutes or an hour, however many times you want to sign up for. But just having the privilege of being able to read the Word of our Lord.
I got to sign up for that at the State House, and I had to tell you, I was it's a little intimidating to think you're going to stand up in front of everybody and be reading the Bible. And when I finally did it, y'all told me how wonderful it would feel. And I thought, I've done things like this before. I get it. I've done things at the Majesty of the State House. It'll be great. Not until I stood there and started reading the Word of God and felt the anointing on my shoulders did I understand what you all were talking about. It was amazing. And if you think reading for 15 minutes, I've just got to get through that. When you all tapped me on the shoulder and said somebody else was there, I was disappointed. I wanted back up.
Right. There were a lot of people that happened to. In fact, there were some that were only going to read a couple of minutes. And we actually, after 15 minutes, because it was someone else that signed up, we'd have to pull them away from the podium. But there were so many testimonies in that, so many people touched just because of the passage that they read during the time that they were there. It meant something to them. We had so many. One was had a prodigal son, and she actually read the part about the prodigal son and was weeping because she felt like the Lord was telling her son was coming home. But it was story after story like that that happened over and over during that 8 days of reading at the Capitol.
Well, and I don't know, I certainly wasn't watching the timing to see when I was going to get to be there, but I knew what I wanted to read, and God allowed me to do it. I got to finish one book and start another, and I was wanting to read about the watchman on the wall. That's one of the verses I do for this show. It's why I do this show, that if God gives you a warning and you don't tell them, it will be on your head. But if you tell them, then, whether they do or don't prepare, you've done your part. That's one of the reasons I do this show. I got to read that out loud from the Capitol. It was just confirmation for me and wonderful. So here we are, June 30th, 8 a.m. We're starting this on all 99 counties, 99 plus one is what you're calling it.
Mm-hmm, yes. And we're still looking for county captains in quite a few of the counties. We're over halfway there, but we're trying to get county captains. And you can actually go to website kingdombuilderenterprises.com and go on the map and click and see if you have a county captain, and it gives their email address that you can just go on and email them to find out more information. There are several counties that their courthouse does not allow you to be on the grounds after 10:30 or 11 at night. So we have adjusted several counties, and you can get that information from your county captain, whether you'll be starting at 6 or 7 and reading for 5 days till like 11 at night, or you will be doing the round the clock. So we are adjusting to go by the rules, of our county courthouses.
But we're just asking people to read and in the vicinity of the courthouse, and as you say, following the rules there. This is nothing to argue over. It's not legalistic. Just going to read it. And do you have a certain translation that folks are supposed to read from? A Bible that they're to read from?
Well, we're recommending that they use the NASB, the New American Standard Bible, because that is the closest interpretation to my understanding. And there will be one Bible at every courthouse for them to read from, so that they can just go, and it might be something different. There's no legalism in this, but that's just what I was recommending. But they will go up, they will be sitting on a stand or a podium. That way they can just, the person that's reading before them, they can just move in right behind them and they'll point to where they're at. And the same thing will keep going through the Bible, because it's approximately takes 80 hours, and we have to keep the flow going to get that done.
And if we start June 30th at 8 a.m. and you go all the way around the clock, you expect to finish July 3rd about midnight?
About 4 to 6 in the afternoon.
Oh, about 4 to 6. So the day before July 4th, you'll be finished about 4 to 6 p.m. in the afternoon. And here's what you need to know, folks, and we'll be talking to Bill Federer in our show. He's going to join us here shortly. here's what you need to know. Our founding fathers, and Bill, be listening because you can correct me on this, but our founders knew that our dependence on God and our salvation would greatly secure our independence as a nation. And so this fits very well with our history. We'll be talking with Bill about this shortly. So to read this right before July 4th is just so fitting, Jenny. How can people call you, or is there a phone number, or do you want them just to go to that website?
Well, they can go to the website, or there's an email also. That's where they can get their county captain information. If there is no county captain, it will tell you to go to Iowa Bible Reading Marathon at gmail.com, and that will come to me. So if you just want to go there first, that's fine. I can connect you up with your captain, or if you're interested in being one, you find out you don't have a county captain, you can let me know, and we've actually got all kinds of documents. It's all spelled out. It's very simple, and that's what the Lord said. Make this simple. We're not even using the microphone. It's just about reading the word into the atmosphere. So we have sample documents for you to use. Everything, a scheduling Excel sheet is already done for you. It's basically getting people and getting permission at your courthouse and having a Bible.
Because you may have to get a permit to have a chair, a little spot on your courthouse lawn. You may have to get a permit. So you do want to be law-abiding. You do want to go through the process as pleasantly as possible, not with an attitude or an elbow out that this is my right and I get to do this. Just pleasantly.
That is correct. And it's just getting permission and finding out the hours and where they want you to read from.
Okay.
So,
all right. So Iowa Bible Reading Marathon at gmail.com. Iowa Bible Reading Marathon at gmail.com to talk to Jenny, to sign up, to get more information, or you can go to Kingdom Builders Enterprises, kingdombuilderenterprises.com, for the map of Iowa to see where your counties, where you might need help. If you're hearing this for the first time, I'm going to ask you to explore it, pray about it, and see how you can help. Certainly, every one of us who call ourselves Christians can step up and read for 15 minutes and maybe help find, if each church would take a 2-hour block in the county, you'd probably have it done.
Yes.
So let's try it, folks. Let's make sure we do not let this go and that we don't do it well. Let's do it very well. And the words that we do speak in the atmosphere, Jenny, will not return void.
That is correct.
Thank you for coming on. All right, now you can stay on for a little bit if you wish, but I want to bring Bill on. Bill Federer is joining us. Bill, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, Tamara, great to be with you.
You are with AmericanMinute.com, American Minute, which you supply little excerpts for radio. Do you have for radio shows? I know I get your emails that just have great information on them every so often.
Yes, I have a 60-second radio spot called American Minute. It's just an MP3 file, but it's something for every day of the year. And then people asked for the transcript of it so much that we send it out as a daily email, and then it sort of grew into a email with pictures and maps and different things to highlight our heritage. And a whole lot of it is on our leaders calling us to pray.
And that's why I wanted to have you on today. Have you seen the proclamation for Iowa?
Yes, and it's very much in line with proclamations that have been given in the past. I put together actually a book called Prayers and Presidents, and so I go through every past president and their proclamations of prayer. And so during the Revolution, you had many of the colonies declaring days of fasting and prayer, and Washington ordering his troops to observe the days of fasting and prayer. One was in Boston when the cannons were put on Dorchester Heights and the British were going to attack, and the colony of Massachusetts had a day of fasting, and Washington orders his troops to observe it, and a storm comes up the very day the British were going to charge up the hill, and so the British had to abandon Boston. And then the Continental Congress declared days of fasting and prayer.
Okay, I'm going to hold you there. We've got to go to break. As you can tell, listeners, he's already got the roll going. You're going to hear a lot of good information today, and when the show's over, you're going to want more. So stay tuned. 99.3 FM, Truth for Our Time.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can give these grandkids back, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We can help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
And I have on my Facebook page, Truth for Our Time, the proclamation, a photo of it signed by our governor, April 26th. All scripture is essential to prepare to be used to be the people, prepare us to be the people God wants us to be and to accomplish this purpose for which He created us. The last whereas is the one that seems to be irritating folks. Regular Bible reading. Let's see. No, it's the last paragraph. Therefore, I, Terry Branstad, governor of the state of Iowa, do hereby encourage all Iowans to join in this historical 99 county Bible reading marathon to take place June 30th through July 3rd, 2016, in front of all 99 courthouses. And furthermore, and here's the line, encourage individuals and families in Iowa to read through the Bible on a daily basis each year until the Lord returns. That's the line that seems to be really irritating people. Bill Federer, bad line, good line. We know it's okay. You can give us the long history list of founding fathers, presidents, governors who have already done something similar.
Right. Well, Woodrow Wilson during World War I not only had a day of fasting and prayer, but he wrote the foreword to a pocket Bible that was given out to the millions of the soldiers. And he said, the Bible is the Word of God, and that you should read it, and not just little snippets of it, but long passages of it. And he goes on and on. And then Democrat President Franklin Roosevelt passed out Gideon's New Testaments and Book of Psalms to all the soldiers in World War II, and he followed the same example. He wrote the foreword to it. And he says, as Commander-in-Chief, I take pleasure in commending the reading of the Bible to all who serve in the armed forces of the United States. Through the centuries, it's been a source of inspiration, so on and so forth. Signed, Franklin D. Roosevelt. And then you have Democrat President Harry S. Truman having the National Day of Prayer made into an annual event. And then Reagan made it the first Thursday in May. And so we look back, and there's been this tradition there of reading the Bible. I love the quote from Franklin Roosevelt. He said, I hope you reread the Constitution. Like the Bible, it ought to be read again and again. And so I actually put together a whole book called The Faith of FDR. People says, why'd you do a book on FDR? Well, he's sort of the patron saint of the left. And here he is saying stuff like the whole world's divided between pagan brutality and the Christian ideal. We choose human freedom, which is the Christian ideal. Another place he says the world is too small for Hitler and God. Nazis have announced their plan of enforcing their pagan religion around the world, by which the cross of mercy would be displaced by Mein Kampf and the swastika. Another place, Franklin Roosevelt said, "We guard against the forces of anti-Christian aggression." Another place, he talked about, "This war effort will be carried through. It will not be imperiled by betrayers of America, betrayers of Christianity itself." Another place, Franklin Roosevelt said, "Those forces hate democracy and Christianity as two phases of the same civilization. They oppose democracy because it is Christian. They oppose Christianity because it preaches democracy." And on Labor Day, 1941, Franklin Roosevelt said, "Preservation of these rights is vitally important, not only to us who enjoy them, but to the whole future of Christian civilization." And so here we have a Democrat president, just 70 some odd years ago, saying that he wanted to preserve Christian civilization. And I thought it was interesting. FDR gave an address at the 400th anniversary of the printing of the English Bible. So here he is giving him, and he says this is October 6, 1935. FDR said, "We cannot read the history of our rise and development as a nation without reckoning the place the Bible has occupied in shaping the advances of the Republic. Where we have been the truest and most consistent in obeying its precepts, we have attained the greatest measure of contentment and prosperity." So here again, a Democrat Bible encouraging Democrat president encouraging the reading of the Bible.
And we're bringing up the Democrats not because they have any corner on biblical or moral or sacred issues. They don't. In fact, they were the ones who had to vote 3 times in 2012 whether or not they'd let God stay in their platform at their national convention. But you bring them up because they are so far gone to the left and oftentimes not supportive of the Bible reading. So that's why you're bringing them up, to show that the history and the precedent of even Democrats who support the reading of the Bible.
Right. They're trying to say, well, you Christians are so right-wing. And it's like, wait a second, right-wing? How can you call FDR right-wing?
Right.
Here this very prominent leader on the left who got himself elected 4 times. Here he is telling the Americans that they should read the Bible. So how can you criticize, the governor for wanting to encourage reading the Bible when the patron saint of the left, Franklin Roosevelt, encouraged reading the Bible, and Woodrow Wilson did the same thing.
Now, I have loaned out your book, The Prayers of the Presidents. Great book. I am careful to loan my books out, and I did. Got the best of me. Someone showed interest in it, and I loaned it out. So I don't have that one in front of me. But I know when we go through our presidents, you mentioned George Washington, our very first president, obviously had a deep faith. Eisenhower, all of them, they all the way through. So this is not anything new. People like to say under God was added to the pledge in the 50s. So this is something new. Actually, I think, tell me if you know, but to me it seems like they probably put that in the pledge in the 50s because the nation was already starting to fall away from their biblical foundations, and people wanted to ensure and remind folks in the classroom when they recited it each day at that time that we were one nation under God.
Well, at the time, the country was 98% Christian, and the Cold War was beginning with the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union specifically said there is no creator, there is no God, they're pushing evolution. And as a result, you don't have any God-given rights because there is no God. And therefore, you only have rights what the state says, and therefore, you're a creature of the state, you're a servant of the state, you're owned by the state is your God, the state is everything. And so our founders, Eisenhower and the leaders in America said, wait a second, we're the opposite. We have all of our rights and freedoms because, as the Declaration says, all men are endowed by their Creator. Now, that comes from the Bible. In Islam, all men are not created equal. Allah loves the Muslim who is submitted, and Allah hates the infidel. The Quran says to be ruthless to the infidel, make war on the infidel, kill the infidel wherever you find them. And so there is no concept in Islam that all men are created equal. It's only faithful Muslims that get the rights. Hinduism has the caste system, and even though it legally is not in place in India, it still culturally is practiced, but it had been practiced for thousands of years. And Hinduism has a caste system where the highest caste is the Brahmin. They're near divinity in their system. And the lowest caste is called the Dalits, the untouchables. And they have to take care of the garbage, clean the toilets. Nobody else can even touch them, or they will get unclean. And so there is no equality in their system. It is all this hierarchical class structure. Equality did not originate in India, and then equality did not originate in atheistic countries, where your communist countries, where your worth is dependent on your utility. If you're useful to the state, you're worth more. If you're not useful to the state or society, you are worth less. Well, in America, Harry S. Truman, a Democrat, in his inaugural address, 1949, said, "We believe all men are created equal because we're created in the image of God." Well, question, what belief system believes you're made in the image of God? Jews and Christians, Book of Genesis. In Islam, Allah has no image. In Hinduism, there's 300 million different gods, so pick which one you're in the image of. And then in atheism, there is no God. So the fundamental idea that we have in America is you're equal before the law because you're equal before the Creator. And that's mentioned in the Declaration. And this is a Bible concept. It doesn't appear anywhere else in history.
All right, let me touch on that. In the Declaration, God is mentioned 4 different times in different ways. Not 4 different gods. It's not an ecumenical, all religions are equal. It's the one true God mentioned as the supreme being or the supreme judge, as the creator, and other ways. So what you're talking about here is America was founded on Christianity. Let's be very clear about that. And the First Amendment is not just to allow every religion to be taught in the schools, etc., which now we're seeing Islam being taught in the schools, but we can't allow kids to pray, not to the Christian God, the God of our foundation, the God in our Declaration. So the First Amendment gives us the freedom to choose our religion. This is true. But there are those religions who are not just religions, like Islam, that is also a military system and political system, that is using and misusing that First Amendment to do us harm.
Right. I actually read through every charter of every colony. A little background. Europe was all Catholic. And then the Muslims invaded, and they took over all of Eastern Europe. They took over all of the Greek. Turkey used to be the Byzantine Christian Empire. All 7 churches mentioned in the Book of Revelation were wiped out by the Muslim Turks. Syria used to be the first country that was completely Christian, evangelized by the Apostle Paul until the Muslims conquered it. Egypt was completely Christian, evangelized by Mark that wrote the Gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, until the Muslims conquered it. There used to be 250 Catholic dioceses along North Africa in the 7th century. Morocco, Algiers, Tunisia, Libya. It was all Greco-Roman, Judeo-Christian for centuries until the Muslims conquered it. And then the Muslims came into Europe and surrounded Vienna, Austria in 1529. And so the Catholic Holy Roman Emperor is Charles V of Spain. And he's faced with a double dilemma. Protestant Reformation on one hand, started by Martin Luther in 1517. Muslim invasion on the other hand, surrounding Vienna, Austria in 1529 under Suleiman the Magnificent. And so Charles V decides to do something that affected us today. What did he do? He did the Treaty of Augsburg of 1555. And this treaty had a little Latin phrase that had huge repercussions. What was the phrase? Cuius regio eius religio, which means whose is the reign, his is the religion. In other words, look, Protestant king, believe whatever you want in your kingdom. Let's just work together against these Muslims who are invading Europe because they want to kill us all. And so it worked. They stopped the Muslim invasion, but it started a domino effect in the next century where different kings decided to believe different things. Northern Germany and Sweden were Lutheran, Switzerland, Calvinist, England, Anglican, Scotland, Presbyterian, Holland, Dutch Reform, Switzerland, Italy, Spain, France, Austria remained Catholic. But it was a situation suddenly in Europe that instead of everybody being Catholic, you could believe what your king did. But if you did not believe the way your particular king did, you were persecuted and you fled. And so this mass migration of people shifting around Europe, and they spilled over and founded colonies in America. So I read through every charter of every colony. Virginia was an Anglican colony, the Church of England, from 1606 to 1786. Massachusetts was a Puritan colony. Rhode Island was a Baptist colony. New York was a Dutch Reformed colony. Delaware and New Jersey were originally Swedish Lutheran colonies. Maryland Catholic, Pennsylvania Quaker, Connecticut and New Hampshire were Congregationalists. You get the picture, and guess what? It was one Christian denomination per colony, and they did not get along. And they would chase each other out of each other's colonies. But then the Revolutionary War started, and they had to work together against the King of England. After the Revolution, their attitude was, we may not agree on religion all the time, but you were willing to fight and die for my freedom. I need to let you practice your faith. And so they began to tolerate each other. First Protestants. At the time of the Revolution, 3 million Americans, 98% were Protestant. And I read through every state constitution. 9 of the original 13 state constitutions required you to be a Protestant Christian to hold state office. I mean, here you have New Hampshire. Every office holder had to be a Protestant. You had Georgia. You had to be a Protestant. North Carolina, no person who denies the being of God or the truth of the Protestant religion shall hold office. South Carolina, 1778 Constitution. The Christian Protestant religion shall be deemed the established religion of this state. I actually talked to attorneys that said, well, if they wanted America to be a Christian nation, why didn't they just say so in the Constitution? I go, duh, they did. Their state constitution. Did you read them? And then 3 states were liberal. And they said all you had to do was believe in Delaware, all you had to believe in the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost to hold state office. Maryland, all you had to do was be a Christian to hold state office. You said, that's liberal? Yeah, by saying Christian, you could be any denomination of Protestant and even Catholic. And a real liberal state was Pennsylvania. Ben Franklin signed that constitution that said all you had to do was believe in the divine inspiration of the Old and New Testament to hold state office.
All right, hold that thought.
You could be Protestant, Catholic, or even one of these new denominations.
We've got to go to commercial break. We'll be right back after these messages, talking with Bill Federer on our Christian heritage.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money-back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
And thanks for joining us. I am Tamara Scott. You're listening to Truth for Our Time, where we help you live God's Word in today's world. If He expects you to live through it, He has directed you how to do it somewhere in His Word. And just a thought, one of the government books that government students in the sophomore, junior, senior years read from BJU University comments that those who were leaders in the I believe it was in the Jewish community, had to write the book of the law out of Leviticus and some of the Exodus. They had to write the books of the law before they would take their office so that they knew the law. What a great idea. Can you imagine if our folks had to do that or even had to write something out of the Bible, how much better off we'd be. But Bill Federer is my guest today. Several books by Bill. I have several on my desk right here. One is, and I love it when this happens, I owned this book. I loved this book. I bought copies for every one of my children. It's America's God and Country Encyclopedia of Quotations. It is so handy to use as a reference when you need to write a speech or you've got to find a paper. And so I'm on this book, page 250. You brought up Benjamin Franklin. If your kids are in a government school, they often are told that he wasn't a Christian and that him and Jefferson were they're kind of lifted up as the two that were not Christians. So let me just read this one little story that I absolutely love. As an ambassador of the United States, Benjamin Franklin was at a dinner of foreign dignitaries in Versailles. The minister of Great Britain proposed a toast to King George III, likening him to the sun. The French minister, in like kind, proposed a toast to King Louis XIV, comparing him to the moon. Benjamin Franklin stood up and toasted. George Washington, commander of the American armies, who, like Joshua of old, commanded the sun and the moon to stand still, and they obeyed him. Now that's going back to a biblical story that he must have known from heart, and so call him a Christian or not, whatever you want to call him, Bill Federer, Franklin had a faith, didn't he? He at least knew the Word of God.
Right. Well, he was raised Presbyterian during a War of Jenkins' ear. Ben Franklin proposed a general fast in Pennsylvania, and here he is calling for him to fast and pray. He also raises the first volunteer militia in America. It was the Quaker state, and so they were like, well, we're supposed to be nonviolent. And he goes, I got a way around it. Let's just make it voluntary. And so that's what caused him to become most popular. When George Whitefield was preaching up and down the colonies, Ben Franklin printed all of his sermons. This was like printing the Billy Graham sermons of the day, and Franklin spreading them up and down. And Franklin had composed his own prayers, and he said, Lord, preserve me from atheism. And he writes a letter to the people in Europe, and he says, you can send your kids to America and know that there's no atheists there. But just a fascinating person. He called for prayer at the Constitutional Convention. So they're writing the U.S. Constitution. There's a deadlock, and he says, during our contest with Great Britain, when we were sensible of danger, we had daily prayer in this assembly for divine protection.
And
so,
and Jenny's on the phone too. Jenny, anytime you want to jump in, please jump in. But the Iowa, you've got the book I'm holding up is this 3 Secular Reasons Why America Should Be Under God. And you have every preamble, and Iowa's being we the people of the state of Iowa, grateful to a supreme being for the blessings hitherto enjoyed, and feeling our dependence on him for a continuation of those blessings, established this Constitution. Every preamble for the 50 states mentions God in some fashion, correct?
Right. Now, they all did, at least somewhere in their history. Most of them still do, but a few of them don't. But it's interesting when you look through the heritage that it is clearly consistent. And I mentioned how 9 of the states required you to be a Protestant. Then there was an Irish potato famine, and millions of Irish Catholics came to America. And that's when the Catholic percent went from 2% to 20%. And there was an initial backlash against the Irish immigrants, and then it settled down. And that's when many states changed their constitution from requiring you to be a Protestant to all you had to do was be a Christian. And so in 1835, North Carolina changed its constitution to say every office holder had to make a declaration of belief in the Christian religion. Then there was a persecution of Jews in Bavaria, and 250,000 Jews came across. And then many states, like Maryland, changed its constitution to allow Jews to hold office. So in 1851, Maryland's state constitution said every office holder had to make a declaration of belief in the Christian religion. And if the party shall profess to be a Jew, the declaration shall be of a belief in a future state of rewards and punishments.
So when I brought up a moment ago, the ACLU, and I'm sorry, but your information, I have it spread out all over my table because this is how I work, but you've got great information. I'm now holding in my hand the book Backfired by William J. Federer, Federer, A Nation Founded on Religious Tolerance No Longer Tolerates Its Founder's Religion. And in this book, you're talking about the ACLU, a fanatical, what'd you call them, illegal terrorism?
Right. Well, the ACLU is the most undemocratic organization. You think undemocratic, right? You have many states, 70, 80% of the people vote to say they want God in their, country or their state, or they want to have a marriage as a man and woman. And the ACLU will bring a lawsuit before a liberal judge and have that judge say, we don't care what the will of the people is. We're going to force our view down the throats of everybody. And so a democratic form of government means that the laws reflect the people's wishes. And if the majority of the people wish for marriage to be a man and a woman, and this group comes along and says, we don't care what the will of the people is, we're going to push our views. And so what do you call it when a minority forces its will on a majority? That's the definition of tyranny.
Boy, we see that happening with the ACLU and with the LGBTQ community. And that's the beauty of America is that minorities were not just trampled on. We don't have a democracy where majority rules. We have a representative republic. And minorities their views are certainly taken into consideration, and all are protected under the equal clause as far as, be careful how I say that, we're created equal is what I meant to say. We're all created equal. The 14th Amendment, I think, has been misinterpreted. I think it's amazing that they can't find life for the baby in the womb under that protection, but they can find imagined rights, as the Supreme Court in Iowa said, to give to somehow okay same-sex marriage. But I wanted to touch the ACLU, the numbers, the cost. In this book, you have listed some of the lawsuits, and they're now threatening us here in Iowa. Their eye is on litigation, them and the Freedom from Religion Foundation folks. And not only, you'd call them a tyranny, but I have another book in front of me, ACLU's War Against America by Reverend Don Swarthout. Some of the figures, 150,000 Barrow County, Georgia, 615,500 in Florida Supreme Court, 121,500 in Kentucky, 277,000 in Kentucky, 299,000 in Kentucky. These are just some of the fees that taxpayers end up then paying the ACLU for taking a case and enforcing something upon, like you say, the majority of residents and citizens that we don't want. And then we end up having to pay their fees?
Right. It's a twist on, it was a bill that said if a poor person is discriminated against at work, and he could bring a lawsuit, and so as to help. And so they have twisted that to pushing this anti-God agenda. And, prior to 1830, there were no law schools in America. If you wanted to be a lawyer, you apprenticed with a lawyer. You learned the rules, and you would read Blackstone's law commentaries, which went back to the idea that you have rights from a creator and so forth. Well, then in the 1850s was the theory of evolution popularized by Charles Darwin. And then in the 1890s, you had a Harvard law professor named Christopher Columbus Langdell, and he's the one that said, hey, let's apply evolution to the legal process. Instead of going back to what the founders said, let's just change it. Let's have it evolve. And he invented the case precedent theory of law. And so he helped influence Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., who was a Supreme Court justice, and he came up with his theory of legal realism. It was this concept of forget what the founders said. You just can have laws be whatever public opinion can swallow. I mean, it was an intentional effort to simply detach ourselves. And he says there's nothing sacred about laws and so forth.
All right.
And,
hold on, because
now,
we've got another break. It is coming on our final break. We'll be right back after this, and we'll learn more from Bill Federer.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can give these grandkids back, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We can help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I've purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
And thanks for staying tuned. We had Jenny Caligiuri on the first part of the show talking about the 99 County Bible Reading Marathon. And you can find information if you want to go to Kingdom Builder Enterprises, kingdombuilderenterprises.com. You can also go to the Iowa Bible Reading Marathon at gmail.com to send a message to Jenny to ask. But on that kingdombuilderenterprises.com, you can see what counties where they still need help. And this is not going to be a lot of work. It just shouldn't be if we get enough people together on it. Certainly every church in the community that's a Bible-believing church ought to step up. She'd like every church in the county to participate, and someone from all the cities to participate. So this is certainly a very positive thing to happen, and I really like that it's happening right before July 4th. And you have some leeway as to how you do things as far as whether you go all through the evening and 24 hours, like a watchman on the wall, or whether you do it in segments because the courthouse may ask you to because of their time permits having people on property. But I'm asking you, if you've not heard about it, please contact Jenny at the email Iowa Bible Reading Marathon @gmail.com. Now, talking to us about that, because as soon as our governor, and thank you, Governor Branstad, for signing such a proclamation, and he took time to read the proclamation, and it was just a really nice ceremony. I've gotten the honor to attend several proclamation signings and bill signings, and it was just a very pleasant one. And someone else has raised the point that the governor has also signed proclamations for a day honoring a day of Muslim appreciation in Iowa. No one fussed about that one. And I guess Bill Federer, my guest, AmericanMinute.com, Bill Federer, historian, I guess this is my question. People seem to attack Christianity more than the other. Somehow they feel like we have to accommodate and make room for these other faiths, but we can beat up and silence and oppress Christianity, as just happened in Fairfield Community School. We've been doing stories on that in this show. The kids who wore armbands that didn't say anything on them, just an armband, were told to take theirs off if they supported biblical Christian tenets. But the kids who wore armbands promoting the transgender bathroom were allowed to wear those. Now, we already have precedent on that if we're going to do the evolutionary court system of precedents in Tinker versus Des Moines. So stay tuned. We'll continue to keep telling you more about that story. And if you didn't hear that show last week, one of the pastors in town is having youth group students who are just scared to death to use the bathroom, kids of the opposite sex are just coming into the locker rooms because they can on a dare. Your children are no longer safe. Businesses near the school say kids are flooding their restrooms on lunch break and after school. It is no longer safe because a minority, the principal superintendent called us and she said it was less than 5. And now you have 600 students being inconvenienced and scared and put out because of this movement that really no one asked for. And there's no way a federal government can enforce it at this point. All right. So Bill Federer, it seems to be these minorities keep pushing us around. I guess that's what I'm getting to in that First Amendment. It seems to people think it's supposed to accommodate everything but the Christian faith.
The First Amendment was introduced by James Madison. James Madison put on the Supreme Court Joseph Story. Joseph Story said the purpose of the First Amendment was not to countenance, much less advance, Mohammedanism or Judaism or infidelity by prostrating Christianity, but simply to exclude all rivalry among the different Christian denominations. So again, back at the time of the founding, every state had its own favored denomination. And, for example, Connecticut had established the Congregational denomination all the way up until 1818. Massachusetts had established the Congregational Christian denomination up until 1833. And so the First Amendment was simply to keep the federal government out of state government's hands. In 1889, John Bovier's Law Dictionary, which was a popular dictionary, gave a definition of religion. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. By establishment of religion, it is meant the setting up of a state church, or at least conferring upon one church of special favors which are denied to others. The Christian religion is, of course, recognized by the government, yet preservation of religious liberty is left to the states. And he says the provision in that relating to religious tests are limitations on the power of the federal Congress only. And then he says, perhaps the 14th Amendment may give additional securities if needed. Well, he hints at that 14th Amendment was a brand new thing. And it was the Democrats in the South were passing Jim Crow laws to treat the freed slaves as second-class citizens. Republican John Bingham of Ohio pushes through the 14th Amendment to force the states in the South to give rights to these freed slaves. Well, these justices that have been wanting to apply evolution to the legal process said, well, hey, let's use this 14th Amendment to cause the First Amendment to evolve. Now, there's no problem with the Congress evolving, but it's supposed to be done through the amendment process, which requires 2/3 of the states or 2/3 of the congressmen and senators. In other words, the majority of the people need to be in favor of the amendment. But the ACLU wants to bypass the people, and rather than having it evolve through the amendment process, you just get an activist judge to change the definition of words that are in existing laws.
And that's what we're seeing. The courts are using this technique to force a social agenda on the people that would not otherwise be allowed to exist because the people would vote it out. We've seen this with several issues. Now, I did not mean to cut you off, but we have only a couple minutes. And I want you just to address for our audience very quickly, if you can. If I were an atheist, why should I still want one nation under God and a godly or the Christian foundations that we have?
If there is no creator, you don't have any other rights other than what the government gives. So the EU, you don't have First Amendment rights in Europe. You have rights and privileges that the government decides to give you, but you can't stand there and say, I have these rights that no government can take away. If you want rights the government cannot take away, there must be a source for those rights higher than the government. That's why John F. Kennedy, in his inaugural address, we're all familiar with the line where he says, don't ask what you can do for your, what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. We're all familiar with that line. But in that same inaugural address, John F. Kennedy said, the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. Well, guess what? If there is no God, the rights come from the generosity of the state. And what the state giveth, the state can take it awayeth.
Right.
I love the quote from Gerald Ford. He says, the government that's big enough to give you everything you want is big enough to take away everything you have. You look at Europe, and you see it's gone from a Judeo-Christian past into a secular, free sex, gay, neutral, and now it's going into an Islamic future. right? So Europe used to all be Catholic, Protestant, Reformation, Jewish neighborhoods. And then the French Revolution took it into this secular phase where they said nothing special about our biblical past, just do whatever you want. So into Europe comes all these new beliefs and all this loose morals and finally the gay agenda. And now coming into Europe is Islam.
Right.
And it's taken over and they're having more kids. And the Europeans are scratching their head thinking, how did we get here where there's, 5 million Muslims surrounding Paris and the number one name for newborns in London, Milan, and Brussels is Mohammed. And the number one crime in Norway, Sweden, and Denmark is rape.
And we need to have you come back and do another show on Islam as you have before. An authority on Islam, you can have him come speak in your community. You can have him come. Bill Federer, AmericanMinute.com. Thank you for joining me today. Jenny Caligiuri, 99 County Bible Reading Tour. We're out of time. You've been encouraged. Never be complacent.